Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Brandon from That's Not Acting Either, reaction channel, educational videos from a very unique perspective, which is the whole world of acting. As an acting coach yourself, you bring a very unique angle to your review, reaction, and analysis videos. You've put out, I think, almost 500 videos I saw, and you
Yeah.
cover a plethora of all kinds of music genres and various content that you react to. Welcome, Brandon. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm happy to be here. Happy to help.
Thank you for stopping by and for allowing me the time to ask you some questions and pick your brain. Tell
Sure.
me, let's just dive straight in. I'd like to know from you personally, what brought you on this journey? What led you to want to do this?
Well, now we didn't plan this, but that's exactly what brought me on this journey. Being in the industry that I'm in or that I was in as a coach, working
Hmm.
mostly with students, college students, and people, wanting to go to arts colleges, working on monologues or whatever they were doing for their classes.
Uh-huh.
Um, Once the pandemic hit, of course, the colleges closed for a while, and uh, in-person, face-to-face work was really hard to arrange and to like accommodate everybody. So
Right.
I hit a funk like a lot of people did, and went on a bunch of social media spirals, and I came across some reaction channels, and listening to people do what they did, and they were entertaining, sure, but I thought that watching I said, I can do that. I can do that, and maybe have something to say that not a ton of people were saying. Nobody that I found was
Yeah.
saying anyway.
That's
So
very
that's how it
interesting.
started. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's a very entrepreneurial and very innovative way to say, you know what? I need to do
Yeah.
something. What is it going to be?
I was gonna say that's a great spin for I would have gone with desperate
Hey, either way,
myself.
something good came out of it. So
Yeah.
desperation, I guess, has its benefits, right?
Right.
Which is even, speaking of psychology, is a great way to
Sure.
tackle that low, right? Finding a
Yeah.
creative outlet. I tell my people that all the time. You create it to create, do something. It's therapeutic. So I think
Exactly.
you used it very well. And you say that you noticed that there was content out there that was, while entertaining, perhaps less educational. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to like no shade on anybody who's just there having a good time and talking about how much they
Right.
love the music. But I thought there was a space open
Yes.
for somebody who could maybe be entertaining, I hope, and also offer something of
Yeah.
substance behind. I mean, there are a lot of singers who love watching reaction videos, a lot of actors who love it, and
Right.
if I can offer some advice that they can use in their own careers that can help them when they perform, then that's great.
That's awesome. And what type of audience do you feel that has drawn people that are looking for that education, a mix? What kind of feedback do you get from because of the angle that you present?
Right. Well, I mean, I think reaction videos are a unique animal when it comes to the if you look at it from an education standpoint,
Yep.
because um, a, a a lot of your audience, you have to learn how to segment your audience and realize how many of them are there because they enjoy watching you and what you bring, and how many of them are just there because of the artist you're covering
Okay.
and their name recognition. So I think if you look at my core audience, which is significantly smaller, I mean, I would say 15 to 20% of my full audience is really interested in my brand and what I have to offer. I think that
Okay.
I get a ton of comments. You get your normal comments. I'm sure you get them too about people. Don't pause so much. Why are you talking so much?
Of
But
course.
I have a lot of people who comment often about how much they appreciate the way that I approach the performances, and also
Yeah.
honestly one of the bigger things, even more so than the educational stuff, is I get a lot of comments about people appreciating how open I am about my own personal feelings and how
Okay.
to express them,
Uh-huh.
and how vulnerable I can get in some of my videos. So it goes between those two. Those two are probably the most appreciative audience members.
So it sounds, just generally speaking, of course, everyone is unique and they come with their own subjective view of how they perceive you as the
Sure.
reactor and educator. But it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is a lot of people are looking either for entertainment, they're looking for education, but you're also saying they're looking for those genuine feelings,
Yeah, yeah, I think that's one of
correct?
the best things about reaction videos, at least from what I've seen from my audience, is people really enjoy sort of experiencing their favorite things, music, TV, film, whatever it is,
Uh-huh.
vicariously through someone else seeing it for the first time and going
Uh-huh.
through those emotions. And whenever you, as the reactor, are willing to really be
Let them
vulnerable,
in. Uh-huh.
yeah, and let your emotions out about it and not try to hide the impact, I think people really connect with that.
I agree. I think that's a key word, and that seems to be popping up throughout various conversations that I'm having. Is that desire for connection,
Yeah,
that desire to, like you just said, see yourself, your own feelings, what you experienced through the eyes of the person reacting. Now,
absolutely.
speaking of reacting and acting, you have a
Yeah,
unique name to your channel, which is That's Not
yeah,
Acting Either. And of course, it works with the fact that you're an acting coach, that's your field of
sure.
expertise. But why that wording?
I have some pet peeves about the craft of acting and how it's viewed by the general population. Sure, but they get a pass. It's other people in my industry
Hmm.
who use the word acting as in the craft interchangeably with pretending. The acting as
Okay.
in I'm acting like I'm sad, I'm acting like I'm angry. That's not what acting is as in the craft. The word acting in the craft actually means to take action. That's all it means. It doesn't mean to pretend things. It's about
Okay.
acting in the moment, like, walking, talking, picking something up,
Doing
that kind of
something.
action. Yes,
Okay.
doing. So it's kind of a double entendre. If I'm looking at somebody who's giving a true, authentic performance as an actor in the craft, I can say they're not acting. That's real acting. They're not pretending. But if
Hmm.
somebody's acting and it's not really acting, they're just pretending and faking it, I can say that's not acting. They're just pretending.
Ah,
So it's kind of a double entendre. It's something I had a little fun with, and it seemed like I really struggled finding a name. I went through a
okay.
couple. There are a couple people online who still joke on my Patreon who still joke and call me. They still joke and call me Dad because when I first started, my channel was called Dad Reacts
Okay.
for like the
Okay.
first 2 weeks, and they still joke about that. But I got tired. It felt a little weird. Everybody was calling me Dad all the time, and I don't know. I didn't like it.
Well,
But
that's
no,
funny. Thank you for sharing that part of your creative process because I
sure,
think that's interesting for the audience to see as well. For those who consider this type of, profession, world, hobby, right? To each, it's somewhat different.
right,
But even those who are watching, they pick various reaction channels. They decide if this is something that they like, that resonates
yeah,
with them, if it's worth subscribing to. So you letting us in a bit on your personal creative process, I think is a cool little insight because
yeah,
that just showcases how even that is a skill to find the right name, what works for you, for your niche.
yeah. It took
I
some
find that
time.
interesting. Yeah, of course, but that's fine. That's the process. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, since you are reacting to mostly music for the most part, I would say, right? What how do you find content where you can pick it apart based on that perspective, acting versus pretending? How much do you find that in music videos and in music?
Okay. Well, really quickly, I'll throw in a little plug. I just started going really hard on my TV and film reaction channel. Started from nothing, just about, and got it up to just over 1,000 now. So that was starting to
Awesome.
grow.
And that's
So
your second channel you just
that's a
started?
second channel.
I
Yeah.
didn't
So I
even
do
know.
right. So I
Congrats.
do TV and film weekly over there when I can. I'm having trouble finding an editor right now. But
Okay.
so far as music videos go, to answer your question, it's a little complicated because I do go into them pretty blind.
Okay.
I do sometimes record videos that I don't post. I have this rule about posting. I don't want it, nothing that if anything that I've recorded is overly negative as far as my reaction or my
Okay.
my critique versus how what I can find positive to say about it, then I don't post it.
Why is that?
Um,
May I ask as a side
sure,
question?
sure. I just don't. I feel like anything that's out there, if there's a person out there who's made music, who's found an audience, and they have value, and the thing that they've done has value, and critiquing things is fine. I think it's fair and I think it's necessary. But if you're just going to come and crap on something,
Okay.
pardon that, I think
Gotcha.
that
No,
it's,
fitting.
yeah, there's no need for that. I don't need to hate
Gotcha.
watch things, right?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's the if then constructive criticism, but not
Right. And I don't
just
want,
dissing it
and my
or
goal is never to disrespect somebody else's work. Somebody put a lot of
okay.
hard work into that, and it may not be something I like. I might see things wrong with it, but people apparently they found an
Okay.
audience, so that's not for
Okay.
me.
Understood.
So
Very,
going
very
back to
mature perspective.
right. Well, I mean, I'm an old guy, but going back to your question, so I jump into a reaction, and then I think there are two kinds of acting really that I come across from
Okay.
music, and one is there are people who are, well, really three. One is real acting. You can come across some really good music videos and things like there's the 10-minute Taylor Swift All Too Well had some really good acting in it. Sadie Sink was great. Stage performance, there are two different kinds of performers that pop up. One is someone who's been trained and knows how to perform well and knows how to act properly and really convey the emotion. And the other is somebody who's just really raw and vulnerable and knows
Okay.
how to let those walls down. And those are two
Okay.
different things, and both deserve respect. Um, and but they're pretty distinct and easy to catch for me, and I comment on that. Now, when it comes to music videos, there is a thing called music that I call music video acting, which is not bad at all, but it's just a different style. It's a little exaggerated. Things are a little bigger and overly played, and it's not really as authentic. Um, but that's just a different style of acting, and if it's done well, that's something I can comment on as well.
And would you
Um,
say at that point that it is pretending, or would you say that's just part of the way that they're presenting the art, the exaggeration, like a hyperbole?
Yeah, yeah, it's more like that. Like, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, realism in acting, like for the stage and film, really isn't that old. We haven't been doing that for too long. I mean,
Okay,
like if you go back to the Shakespearean days, it was all melodramatic. It was all over the top and huge,
true.
and that really developed over the decades. It got a little less so. There were several different little movements in acting that led eventually to the realism that we have today. So,
Okay.
which is my favorite kind of acting, but I think that
The
there's a
realism,
place
you
for
say?
anything. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. There's a more grounded, and it's easier to relate to, I think, for an audience. But again, there's a place for everything. And in
Yeah.
music videos, with the cuts being so rapid, and you're trying to convey a certain message, that certainly does lend itself to that more exaggerated, a little more melodramatic style of acting. And if they do it properly, it can be both authentic and done well, and it can be done campy, and you can tell the artist really isn't committing. So it just
Right.
depends. But yeah, those are the
I
three kinds.
I find, thank you for walking me through that. I find your approach, and I'm grateful for your time because
Sure.
your approach is very unique. Fitting to this these questions I'm having about why are reaction videos so powerful to people, and even more so, what is it in humans that when it comes to our emotions and if we're acting or pretending as we're going through life, these masks we put on or are able
Right.
to put on, especially with social media nowadays, right? We're not physically in people's presence. There seems to be like a hunger for authenticity. You said earlier, people are responding to when you are vulnerable, when you let them in.
Yeah.
What comes
So
to mind? What comes to mind when you think about acting, the human need, well, our tendency to pretend and
okay.
love
All right.
filters?
I think that there are a certain. I mean, the human animal is a really complex animal. I'm sure. I mean, obviously, you know
Oh,
that.
yes.
And
Yes.
these masks that we wear come in many shapes and sizes. And I think that sometimes our real face can end up being a mask for our insecurities.
Right.
And then we
Right.
forget it's our real face, and we think we're just pretending, and then that grows into a whole bunch of other problems.
Ooh, okay.
Um, but I think that the idea, it goes back to connection for me, like what you said before, and I think there's a reason it exploded when it did, when people were feeling particularly isolated. I
Okay.
think that um, I think that longing to see people from the safety of your own home, which is where we all feel safest now, behind our keyboards, but wanting to feel still that you're not alone, that your feelings, your thoughts are mirrored and echoed in other people around you, that there's a whole community of people out there who share that. I had this whole sort of philosophy around reaction videos that I talk about in a few of mine, that talks about sort of the magic of the technology we have, and how and but more so the magic of the art itself, and how, because of where we're at now, an artist, when they get on stage, they're not just performing, they're creating like a moment in a bubble. They're creating a whole
Right.
world. And then if they're really good, they open that up and they allow us to come inside and spend that time with them and feel those feelings and go through that experience. And because of the technology that we have and this connection we can make, we can share that across decades and miles. And there's, I think that's what people are looking for. I think that's why it's attractive to people, because they can watch and say, "Oh, look, that surprised him. That surprised me when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
There's someone out there that I
Relatability.
have something in common with. I'm not by myself."
Wow.
We're still community animals. We're pack animals.
Right.
We
Right.
still want to have that connection and feel. And today, when all the rhetoric is so angry and
Mm-hmm.
everybody feels so divided, and it doesn't matter who you are or how good a friend you are with someone, there's always a topic you avoid because you know that you're going to end up
Yeah.
getting in a huge fight over it.
Mm-hmm.
um, I just think people really are longing for the sense that they're not alone, and I think
That's very
reaction videos are a
powerful.
good way for people to kind of get that impression, to feel that connection.
That's very powerful. And I think very interesting that you say that, because you're right with real, and I'll say real, not because the community online isn't, but I'll say just for the sake of the in-person
Right.
relationships, right? You make a good point. The dilemma there is that we try to avoid conversations that we know may lead to some friction or arguments,
Right.
or it requires a lot of work, right? That even if we try to avoid, there's a level of superficiality in that relationship. So we long for a more intimate connection. And if we want that, we have to do the work and work through any arguments, right? Or
Right.
communicate that we, don't like a certain thing, right? Honesty, vulnerability takes a lot of work. You said safety.
Yeah.
And since we're speaking of acting versus pretending, what do you think that does for a person? They're able to watch someone share their emotions. Let us in your world
Yeah.
from the safety of my home. What's happening here
Well,
in people?
okay. No, I'm not a mental health professional, right? That should be said.
Right.
But
No need to be, from
right.
your experience, your heart.
Okay. Something came to mind when you were talking, and so I had an aunt who was very, very close to me. She raised me for different times in my childhood. We were very close, and as she got older, she began to develop some ideas that were very hard for us to reconcile together. So we just kind of stopped talking about those things. And then
Okay.
when we stopped talking about those things, we stopped talking about anything serious eventually, because no matter what it was, if it was about anything that related to our mental well being or whatever, there was always that path to the place we didn't go anymore. And so both of us always knew when that path was there, and we both decided not to take it. And it created this really, really obvious and conscious rift.
Mm.
And I think that that's that feeds into a lot of what you're saying there. I think that the idea that no matter where we're at, we don't feel safe anymore. A lot of
Mm.
people just don't feel safe in these conversations. They don't feel like they can really open up and be
Be
honest
accepted still,
and
huh?
be, yes, and be accepted with the people that they've even been closest with. And I don't mean safety, by the way, behind the keyboard, the way you would talk about like a troll or somebody being,
Right.
hiding behind it in order
Right.
to
No, no,
say
no.
something
You're
negative.
speaking
Right.
emotional safety, right? Like
Yeah, I feel like
safe
it,
to feel
so
to
so
be
one of the
you.
things that I focus on a lot in my community, I'm very quick um to get rid of a comment, or to be careful about. I've even hidden my channel from a few users because there's just nothing but aggression and negativity
Right.
constantly. I think that it's really important, but people watching, when I open up and I say that, listen, I understand this may be a little faux pas, or the way I'm behaving maybe isn't manly or doesn't fit into some box, but I think
Yeah.
it's really important X, Y, Z, and I share that thing. Then that person sitting back, I've gotten comments from Gen X and Boomer men who
Hmm.
tell me how their whole life, for the first 40, 50 years of their life, they don't remember being happy a single day, because they couldn't tell how they felt to anybody.
Wow.
They've learned that as I gotten older, that it's just not worth it hiding all that stuff away, and they really appreciate me being open and willing to talk about how I feel about things, and being willing to show more vulnerable sides. I get
Yeah.
comments from women echoing similar sentiments, but from different
Yeah.
perspectives.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that's the safety I mean. When they see me do it, and
Yeah.
and this is my space, my community, I think they feel like, oh, well, this is a place I can share this thing. I
Yeah.
can say this thing and it's okay. And they don't have to worry about upsetting their favorite aunt or their favorite uncle or their mom or their brother.
I see.
It's not necessarily as anonymous as some places, but it can
Right.
be, I guess. And
Right.
the
It could
chances of
be
those people coming across it are very small. And they just feel like very, again, safe. It just feels like a
safe.
nice,
Yeah.
a place where you can let those things out, be honest, express yourself freely without worrying about people judging you for it or condemning you for it.
That's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. And what a special community. And great job to you. Kudos to you for creating that type of space for
Thank you.
people. You pointed out that there's, of course, they feel similar, but there's a difference between the way men versus women perceive that. And I think that's
Sure.
awesome. You made that differentiation because we all long for safety, but it'll mean different things to different people, right?
Yeah.
For a man, you said so interestingly that they may have never experienced that type of freedom to even see it
Yeah.
reflected in another man, right? Because to them, it'll be different if it's a woman crying or being emotional than a
For sure.
man, right? They even if they can appreciate, say, for example, my opinion, it will never be the same as hearing a fellow man say, I
Yeah.
live this life. I know what it's like to walk in your shoes in my own way, and I'm still crying, expressing my feelings, allowing my anger, whatever the case. And for women, I
Right.
know that our one of our core needs is safety, right? In relationship, where the man longs for that respect and admiration, the woman longs for that safety, but it'll mean different things for her, not necessarily physical protection, even though that's necessary at times, but that emotional reassurance, affirmation. So you're making that distinction, and I appreciate that, because it says to me various needs are being met, and both men, women, anyone in between, mamas, daddies, anyone that is willing to listen can come and feel safe in whatever way whatever that means to them.
Right.
And I think that's also the power of the community online, like you said, that level of anonymity and
Yeah.
anonymity,
Yeah.
to be able to say, okay, I can express what I'm feeling, and it'll mean different things to different people.
Yeah.
That,
I
that
agree.
that's really powerful. That's really, really powerful. Safety, connection, not having to pretend, I suppose. Huh?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Not
Very,
acting.
very cool. Not acting. And you share as much or as little as you like.
Okay.
What have been some of your favorite songs, videos to react to that have impacted you most personally?
Oh, funny enough, some of my least popular ones probably.
Interesting.
I think that at the beginning of this journey, I stumbled onto someone. I think you found her since you've started as well. An artist named Laura Fabian.
Yeah. 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 La Fabienne. Uh-huh.
She's from a professional standpoint, she's probably one. I mean, she's definitely one of, if not my favorite, because fr based on what I break down, uh, she's one of the best out there to do it, and it's always a joy to sort of watch somebody do something that you understand well,
Okay.
and that's great. But as far as me personally, and there are a ton of artists, I don't want to like that have really made an impact over the time. I've been watching Lar Fabian one, Floor Jansen, Angelina Jordan,
Yeah.
a ton of great. And I'm really shocked. Actually, really fell in love with a reaction that I did to Rihanna
Oh,
in an
really?
Eminem song. Yeah, her performance, her acting performance in that video for "Love the Way You
Okay.
Lie" was
Yeah.
really good.
Okay.
Like really like on a technical level. But I can actually pick out a favorite. I can pick out one that was a favorite for me, and it was by an artist named Loic Noté. Um,
Ooh. Million
and
Eyes.
no, actually,
Another one.
it was his. I can't.
That's all I've reviewed so
His
far.
Mr. Ma'am in English,
Okay.
Monsieur, Madame. I guess I don't like.
Monsieur, Madame. Okay. No, no,
My
yeah, yeah.
accent is awful, but so he did this sort of one take.
Oh, I gotta
Uh,
review that.
this sort of, oh yeah, I'll send it to you. He did this sort of like
Please.
one take street video where he's just walking through the streets. I don't know where, but it's black and white, and he's performing the whole song.
Wow.
And he just walks. I mean, it's just one long take, and it's incredible. The song itself really hit personally with me. The video is forever long because I just wouldn't shut up, but it really struck a chord with me personally. I myself have struggled with um, depression and anxiety and different things my whole life. And he has as well, and he references those things and really gives a really cool perspective on his journey
Wow.
through that and how that affected him and how society, how
Yeah.
his experience with society, like interacting with the world, was
Uh-huh.
shaped by that. And it was just a really powerful performance for me. That's definitely for me. That's always my favorite. It's always going to be my
Wow.
favorite.
So it was because it was very personally relatable to
Yeah,
you.
I think so. Yeah, I think I was
Okay.
just really, yeah. I don't
And
necessarily recommend that one to people when say, "Hey, can I watch one? Give me your links." I
yeah,
never send that
yeah.
one first, but
Yeah,
but it was
yeah.
special to me.
It
Yeah,
was special to you.
yeah,
Now to look at it on the flip side, which videos do you feel have done best for your audience, that are best received? Not necessarily in YouTube analytics sense, because
right.
of course that's kind of like a beast in and of itself,
Yeah.
with all that algorithm, but from the comment section, from people's feedback, the most positive or the most impactful to your viewers,
Okay.
and why?
I think there's a couple of sides to that, and I know you'll understand it when I say it. So there are a couple of artists that really seem to resonate with certain demographics of people for one reason or another, and some of those feel almost it's strange. Whenever I get an artist in and I start getting a bunch of comments really supporting the video but it's very promotional. It almost feels like a sort of underground corporate vibe. Like it doesn't feel
Hmm.
the same to me. It's a lot of like, hey, we're pushed to promote this, and that's great. You should always promote your favorite artists and things. But
Yeah.
if we're talking about, because of what we're talking about here, I would have to go back probably to, um, I would probably have to go back to Lara Fabian. Um,
Okay.
the audience that I gained from hers is not my largest by far, um, but I think that the kind of conversation that comes out of that audience is so personal, and I never feel like I'm being pitched something and
Okay.
again, not that that's negative. It's just it feels very like these people who are following her have developed a very internal and very personalized relationship with her music. And there are all
Okay.
a ton of stories, and I know a lot of artists have these about different ways that her music has helped them at different times in their lives, and they're very passionate. And there are a few of those. I don't want to leave people out, but that one,
Of
it's been with me
course.
the longest, and
It stands out.
I
Yeah.
really feel like it does. The communication from the audience, I mean, as is really there. Um, and then I guess there's a really interesting audience around a singer named I'm sorry, Diana Ankudinova.
Ankudinova. Yeah.
Yeah, Ankudinova,
From
right?
Russia, or Diamond from
Right.
Russia.
Yeah, I have a hard time communicating with a lot of her fans because they don't
Okay.
speak English. It's tough.
Right.
But I do my best to go through and use Google Translate, which is not
Right.
awesome, but I get an idea, and she seems to really connect with people as well. And I wanted to
Hmm.
mention that because I don't know, I feel like um, that's an audience that doesn't really translate to the rest of my channel. It's one of those
Okay.
audiences that are here for her,
Yeah.
but I appreciate how connected they seem to be to her, and she seems to be a sort of a vehicle for hope
Hmm.
for them, and that's really special. Um,
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that is a great segue into that part of the psychology, right? Because we spoke about how it's entertaining, educational, how people look for that vulnerability in the reactor. But
sure,
you just touched on something that I feel like is another important element, which is people come for their favorite actors, movies, music, artists,
right,
because they have this personal link, though they may have never met them in their lives.
yeah,
There is this connection to their life story, right? This person saved my life. This music stopped me from jumping off the ledge. This person
right,
helped me in depression. These lyrics resonate with my life story, losses. And you said a key word again, hope, right? Not only
yeah,
her music, but I would argue perhaps even her life story, right?
yeah,
Even with Lara Fabian and various artists whose life stories, the things that they've let their fans in on, and their music, how the viewers relate to that, and therefore try to come to you in various channels to want to hear what you have to say about this person that is so dear to them.
yeah,
Isn't that
yeah, and
fascinating though? That
it
too,
is,
that psychological need for, this is
yeah,
part of my story. I want to listen to you and how you're going to tie that all up from your perspective.
yeah.
It's so personal.
So that's yeah, that's one of the things that I really love about art in general, performance art
Okay.
specifically, for sure. And I talk about that a lot, but it's kind of ties into what I was saying before about creating that moment and these connections. It really does connect with people in a very special way. Music is very powerful.
Hmm.
The way that it can connect with somebody's
Yes.
emotions, it can reach people in places they didn't even know they had.
Yes. Yes.
Um, that is a double-edged sword, I will say. So, if talking about it from my perspective as a content creator, which I think is what you want,
Right.
um, it is a bit of a double-edged sword because there can be a little bit of blindness, sort of like a bias that gets
Oh
created by
yes.
that.
Oh yes.
Something that comes to mind is my very first reaction ever to Angelina Jordan, who is a wonderful singer, a lovely young human
Right.
being. I think she's amazing, and I've always thought she was amazing. Now, in my first reaction to her, she was doing a studio recording of her song "Million Miles,"
Hmm.
and I know now that it was about her grandfather who had passed away, and it was
Hmm.
very soon after he passed away that they recorded that. And my my comments on the video about her voice and her performance were nothing but complimentary, and I was blown away. I mentioned that I feel like her performance physically, like her presence, was a little flat, and I mentioned that there were two reasons for that. That it could have either been that she's tired. They do this over and over again,
Of
and
course.
you know, maybe she's just not feeling it, or it could be that the content is too emotional. And sometimes when an artist is too connected to a song, in order to keep from being overtaken and not being able to perform and wasting all the camera time and the crews and wasting a ton of money, they end up holding
Mm.
in some of the emotion, which can give them a more flat feel.
Wow.
And so that was my comment. And that was the first video on which I received death threats. I got
Unbelievable.
horrible comments um, uh,
Unbelievable.
about that. But even the ones that weren't terrible, even the ones that were respectful,
Hmm.
still seemed to miss all the good things I'd said
Oh,
and only
absolutely.
heard the critique.
I've seen that. Hmm.
Right. And so, and that comes to me mostly from artists like her.
Hmm.
Angelica Hale is another young artist that has a lot of
Hmm.
very devoted fans who just won't abide the smallest critique.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I mean, they have a ton of lovely fans who also come to me. Yes, I see what you're saying. This is probably why. Great reaction, and that's great. And they have a. I mean, I
Right.
don't want to crap on the whole. It's not the whole fan base.
No, no,
It's
of course.
just certain people can get really wrapped up in this
Hmm.
sort of admiration for this artist.
Absolutely. When,
So
dare I say, for some, it becomes idolatry, for lack of a
yeah, I
better
was gonna
word.
say it, but I
Regardless of
didn't.
religious affiliations, just by
Right.
definition, something becomes an
Yeah.
idol. From a psychological standpoint, I think that's where it becomes harmful because they over identify with this artist. And to be quite honest with you, what you just shared with me about your perception is incredibly interesting. And I don't see that as an attack on her, though I also admire her skills and her ability and her beauty and her abilities and talent.
Yeah.
I never had thought of it like that. You just educated me on something, and I'm
Oh,
listening to you thinking, wow, what a cool, like he has such a neat eye for detail that I wouldn't have thought to consider, right? Not just by saying, it appeared flat, but giving us valid reasons, right? It would be one thing if it's just, negative, I didn't like it, whatever, but there's no reason. You're actually educating your viewers and saying this may be the reason. You're coming at it from an understanding, compassionate perspective, but from an angle that I wouldn't have even considered because you have a fine-tuned eye for acting versus pretending, how exhaustion, how holding in your feelings, like you well said, or detaching
yeah.
from them is mirrored on a human being's face. And I think perhaps in people's idolization, over identification with an
Yeah.
artist, they seem to just hear you through the lens of their admiration, right? They come to the table going, I adore this person, right? And
Yeah.
so anything that doesn't confirm that bias is perceived as negative versus hearing you in the context of all the other good things you said and
Yeah.
hearing you for you saying, well, this is an acting coach. This is a professional who will perceive facial expressions, body language, the smallest little wrinkles and grimaces from a perspective of
Yeah.
emotion, underlying motivation. That's fascinating to me. To me, that connects with what you said earlier about safety. And I would argue perhaps the downside, right? Where we
Sure.
forget that sure, we're safe to express our feelings. Sure, we're safe to, as a reactor and as an audience, we're connecting on this emotionally. But
Yeah.
the risk being that people sometimes forget it is to a degree still a pseudo safety. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of work involved in creating an intimate community here. I've said what I've said. You've said what you've said. I put my heart on my sleeve and shared with the world what this means. But I still have to do the hard work to work through my trauma, to work through whatever this song just brought up in me, right? Be it if I'm
Yeah.
crying, if I'm laughing. Once I turn that camera off, I still have to do the hard work to become the best me.
Oh, yeah.
And that goes for the
Yeah.
viewers as well, right? They may have this pseudo safety of someone else loves my artist, someone else relates to this, someone else noticed something I didn't, and now I'm learning and growing. Wonderful. And maybe I shouldn't call it pseudo safety because it's safe. You're safe. You're
Yeah.
welcome. You're loved. Wonderful. But the work still has to be done by each individual person once they turn off the camera or they shut off their screen. And so I guess what would you say about that statement that there's a downside to creating
Yeah.
this false sense of free for all?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that okay. So there are two things there. You gave me chills for a second because I didn't see where you were going until you got there, and
Yeah, sometimes I don't know either. My
yeah.
apologies.
But no, it's fine. But you did. You gave me. You can see it. I literally like my shoulders clenched. I got chills because. So you know Bo Burnham by chance?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I had like a quick sort of spring up. And I'm sure you know what that's like. You do one reaction, all of a sudden, all of these people come in and like they're really connecting to it. So you want to give them more of it. So I started doing the Inside special that he'd done
Mm.
on Netflix. I was doing it on my Patreon, and I committed to doing the whole thing. Just come sign up on my Patreon. You'll see the whole thing.
Wow.
And I ended up offering to refund people some money because I got halfway through it and I couldn't do it anymore. I kept having people asking, and I tried to explain as best I could, but I was actually that work you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, it was a couple of years ago. Me and my family, we had a house fire and
Mhm.
lost everything, and things were really hard for a while there. And Bo's stuff is very impactful, and
Mhm.
it's very deep, and I couldn't
Okay.
do
Yeah.
it anymore. And because what you're saying is true, you have to do the work after. And for I don't know if you're this way or not, but it's different. It takes more grounding after to do when I do a reaction versus when I watch on my own a piece of
Yeah.
content that might impact me.
Mhm.
um, because I sit down with the intent of exposing myself
Right.
properly, emotionally. Sorry,
Right. You're not quite as
phrases.
safe as your audience, right?
Right, right. That's my deal. That's the agreement that I make is that you're going to get the truth from me.
Yes. Yes.
And so, feeling something, watching a piece of content and feeling moved by it, and feeling impacted, feeling saddened by it, or whatever the case may be, is one thing. Feeling that and then not kind of like dismissing it or shaking it off and pushing it down like we do when we're watching a movie at the theater,
Right.
feeling it and letting it come out and really expressing why you feel that way and what that means to you is a different kind of um, draining. It's a different kind of traumatic, and it takes a lot of work. It really does. You're
Yes.
right. I had never really thought about it that way, but it does.
What are your thoughts on that double-edged sword, that risk of while being safe in a loving
Right.
community, also not, yeah, not
Yeah.
falling into the trap of forgetting that this is still a screen and,
Right.
you know,
I try to go back to what we talked about before, which was the idea of not trying, being conscious myself of just not searching things to sort of dump on. I
okay.
think that I think that they are actually, in my view anyway, they are 100% what you're saying. People feel safe to
Right.
say horrible things because it's distant and they're
Yeah.
anonymous. But I also think that for me, I look at it as a very different thing than when people feel safe to be who they are and express themselves,
Oh, that's
or
good.
just to feel their feelings.
Okay.
Because one is I think that whenever people come in and they're very negative and they're very angry, um, I just approach it from the perspective that it has little to do with me.
Correct.
That
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 maybe they're not safe at all, right?
Yeah, there's something
They
else.
don't feel safe or at
There's
peace.
no way a person who is a healthy, happy person in life
Correct.
just jumps into a bunch of comment sections and even, I mean, just looks for things. I've had some angry comments that are over nothing at all. I almost
Yeah.
understand it when I say, "Oh, she was a little flat there." Like she's never flat, and I mean, everybody's flat sometimes. So whatever. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I understand that motivation. Whenever
Right.
somebody just jumps in and is like, "Oh, you shouldn't wear a hat," and they start griping about
Yeah.
random
Yeah.
things, I
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they just must be a very unhappy person. So I try to
Mhm.
approach it from a place of compassion.
That's good. That's
The
good.
ones that really get underneath my skin and that I have a problem not responding to sometimes are the ones that attack my theory.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's
The
your
ones that,
field. That's your niche.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I'm
don't
like,
come
no, no,
after
no.
my
Listen,
baby. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying, but you're wrong. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you're just wrong. Yeah, but the other ones that are really personal, they just
Yeah.
feel like they're not personal to me. It just
Okay,
feels
I
like
see.
they're just
It
personal
says
for
more
them.
about them. Yeah, and,
Yeah,
and I think that's very wise that you make that differentiation because again, chances are they don't feel safe. They
right.
don't feel whole. They don't feel at peace. They don't feel
Something is
loved and
missing.
accepted. Something
Yeah,
is missing. Something is
yeah.
missing. That's really powerful. I don't want to keep you much longer. Brandon, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today and brought in a very interesting perspective from
Thank
the
you.
whole world of acting and not pretending. Everybody make sure to subscribe. Go check out Brandon's channel. That's Not Acting Either. Link below. Make sure you check out his videos. all kinds of content and detailed expertise analysis of music that you love and your favorite artists.
I want to
Appreciate you,
make
Brandon.
one
Yes.
statement before you kick
Yes.
me out of here. I
I'm
think
not.
just one
Yes.
thing, little
Yes,
thing.
please. Anything.
Absolutely, I understand you're wanting to showcase other people's opinions,
Yeah.
but don't discount your perspective. You have a lovely
Thank you.
perspective. Don't you have a
Thank
great
you.
voice. Don't
Thank
discount
you.
that here. I'm sure that everybody loves listening to you. And say Lara
Thank
Fabian
you.
for me one more time.
Lara Fabian.
I love that so much. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you. And make sure to subscribe, everybody. You don't want to miss awesome content.